Terry, your career has been deeply intertwined with South Africa's democratic evolution. Can you take us through your journey from your early days in the political sphere to becoming vice chairperson of the Independent Electoral Commission slash IEC? What inspired you to pursue a career in electoral management? Just take us back to your early days, childhood, where you're from, and who you are basically in this South African landscape.
Okay, thank you very much for the opportunity. As you indicated, my name is Terry Tselane. I was born in an area towards Sun City. It's a very small village. It's a dusty village called Lishung, which means a bushy area. It is just 40 minutes away from the famous Sun City. In fact, the road that comes from Johannesburg going to Sun City divides the village into two. So that's where I grew up. And from there, I went to secondary school, firstly primary school around that area, a school called Tabang, and went to Chare primary, and then from there went to Sekete. Now, my memory about Sekete is a very interesting one, Sekete Secondary School, because I was the youngest and also the shortest. So our first day at the assembly, most of our schools, when before you start the day, you all gather at an assembly. So we gathered at the assembly like all other schools, like all other days. And then whilst there with the teachers and the principal, the principal, Mr. Ramutla, then was giving an example to the older students and saying that if they don't work hard, they'll end up in class with people like me. So because I was very short and very young, he had to ask me to come to the fore. And when I came in and he was lifting me up, and then I felt so uncomfortable, but it was a very memorable day for me because even though people were giggling about this, the truth of the matter is that that was so prophetic in a sense that he catapulted me into the limelight, and I never left the limelight since then. I'm still in the center stage since Mr. Ramutla picked me up and catapulted me into the limelight. Even though there was those people who were giggling, I'm sure today those who still remember can see that in fact that step was a very significant step in terms of my own development. Even though at that time I did not know, but upon reflection, I can tell that it had a very significant impact in terms of who I am today. And then after the secondary school, my parents decided to take me to a school called Lerotodi, which is in Brits, to finish my high school there. I was more involved in boxing and debating society, and I was the chairperson of both by the time I left the school. From there, and I keep saying this to people, my stepfather had a very strange relationship with me. So there is a time when I was doing matric when he wanted to kill me. And then he hit me with an iron rod. I collapsed and I ran away from home. So I became a street kid whilst I was doing matric. I was not staying at home. I wrote my exams, staying with sympathetic friends who could accommodate me for that period. My mother once asked me, I said, how do you survive, my son, on those occasions when I met her, when I came to see her at night? And I said to her, I'm a very intelligent kid. So we had a boarding school. We had a boarding at our school. And what I would do, I would ask those who were staying at the boarding to bring me food in the morning because I was teaching them. And then also teaching them in the evening. So I would tell them that because I come so early in the morning to teach them, they must bring me food so that I don't have to wait for food at home. They didn't know that I did not have a home. So I managed to get through using basically their services, those who were at boarding. So I was getting food in the morning and food in the evening. And that's how I managed to survive the whole of 1982. 1983, I did not go to university as I had anticipated. But 1984, with the support of my uncle and my mother, I managed to go to the university. My mother was getting money from sympathetic friends and relatives. Every time people came to the house, you'd say, my son is going to the university next year. And therefore, they would actually contribute something. So my mother managed to save this money so that I could go to the university. My second semester at the UNIBO, which is the University of Bophuthatswana in Mafikeng, I was given a bursary by the Bophuthatswana government. So I managed now to survive and live properly like all other kids. And then second year, continued with the bursary. But I also got elected into the Student Representative Council. I was in the executive of the SRC. And then we organized quite a number of protests. I was heavily involved now in student activism. And 1986 at the beginning, I was expelled in terms of Internal Security Act. After I was expelled, I went to the University of Witwatersrand, Wits University. And at Wits, it was through a recommendation. So essentially what they had done, the Botswana government had expelled about 32 students and 10 lecturers. So those students were readmitted, except 5 of us. They said our issue was non-negotiable. And then the lecturers as well, the 10 lecturers. So we then went to Wits. I remember my first day at Wits, I slept in the toilet because I didn't have any accommodation. And the luggage that I had, the ladies who are cleaners managed to put them where they normally put their cleaner stuff. And then from there, I was able to be admitted at Wits, and I was able to get a bursary and then continued. So my mother did not even know that I was actually expelled. It is only during the Easter holidays when I went home, I told her, hey, by the way, I've changed the university. I didn't tell her that I was expelled. She says, where are you now? I said, I'm at Wits now. She says, why did you change? I said, I wanted a university that had high academic standards. He said, oh, okay. And then what year are you doing? By the way, what I didn't say here is that at Wits, even though at UNIVA I was doing third year, at Wits they decided I'm going to start from first year. They wouldn't recognize any of my credits. So I started from first year. So then now when my mother asked me, she says, so which year are you doing? I said, I'm doing second year. I didn't want to say I'm actually doing first year because she was going to be very angry with me to say, you know that we don't have money and we're struggling and then you're doing this. But fortunately, by the time I went home during the Easter holidays, I already had a bursary. And I told her that she shouldn't worry, even though it's expensive at Wits, but she must not worry because I've got, bursary from the Council of Churches and Interfund. And then my second year at Wits, I was arrested and I spent 11 months in prison. So I wrote my exams, my second year exams from prison. I was with quite a number of the leaders that you see today, Vali Musa, Vus Kanyile, Paul Mashatile, Mefi Morobe, Zwalake Sisulu, and all those other people. We shared cells together. quite a number of people who were in the leadership. So from that time, then I was released with conditions. One of the conditions was that I was not supposed to criticize government. I was not supposed to say anything about local government elections, which were going to be taking place amongst tricameral parliament. Black people were excluded from those elections, and we were opposed to them. But they said, in terms of my restrictions, I can't criticize government, and I also can't criticize local government elections. I can't say anything about them, and I can't be in a company of 10 people. I observed those restriction orders for about maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks. After 3 weeks, I decided to defy them, and then ultimately I was elected the president of the Black Student Society. Black students at Wits, we were a minority because Wits was a white institution. Out of 19,000 students, there were only 2,000 Black students. And these Black students included Coloureds, Indians, and Africans. So we then decided that from the time of Steve Biko, that we should organize separately from white students. Because if you participated in the SRC, that is predominantly white, in white institution, Black students were not going to be electable. And therefore, we decided to form our own SRC, which we called Black Student Society, PSS. I was elected into the PSS as the president after some time, and I continued in that position. But 3 months into the position, BSS was banned, together with all other organizations that were banned, 18 organizations, including the United Democratic Front. So when that happened, we had to think of now what to do, because now we could not be in any leadership position. We established from the background an organization called BSIC, Black Students Interim Committee. We said this is the committee that is going to be running the affairs of the students whilst we continued fighting for our unbanning. We then kept on pressurizing the administration to unban us. Ultimately, the Minister of Law and Order, Adrian Flock, said that he was prepared to unban us, provided we followed what they call bona fide student activities. The administration was very excited about this and said they gave us the letter and the offer. And I said to the administration, together with my team, that we are not able to accept this offer. We need to go to the students. So we need to organize under our own name as a band organization in order to have a mass meeting where we're going to talk to the students about Adrian Flock's offer. We then went to this meeting and I addressed that meeting. I did not want the students to accept the conditional unbanning. So I basically went on stage there to motivate why this bona fide student activity thing does not exist. So I told them, I said, nevertheless, this is your meeting, after I had told them why it would be inappropriate for us to accept conditional unbanning. Because I said the army and the police had occupied the townships and our villages. Our leaders were still in prison, like Nelson Mandela. We still had people, our leaders again in exile. And I said, what are bona fide student activities when our leadership is still banned, when our organizations are banned, when our leaders are in exile? I said, there is no way that we can ignore the societal issues around us. And therefore, to accept such an offer would be a betrayal to the people of South Africa. But then I open it up for the students to comment, and then the students naturally rejected the offer, demanded the unbanning of all banned organizations, demanded the release of Nelson Mandela and all other political leaders, demanded the return of exiles and the unbanning of the ANC and all banned organizations. So we went back to the administration and said, we're prepared to go back to be a banned organization, but we're going to continue fighting. Here are the demands that the students have put to you. So we continued, and then the country as a whole went through the mass defiance campaign. And then we joined in that mass defiance campaign. So one day we decided to go to the administration, and I told the administration, we are now going to operate under our own name, and then we are also defying the banning of the Black Student Society. So the administration accepted us back, and then I continued again being the president of the Black Student Society until my term came to an end, and I decided I'm not going to run for the second term. And then that's when I left the university, but also whilst I was at Wits now studying for my master's, Nelson Mandela was given the honorary degree. And then when he was given this honorary degree, I was chosen by the campus constituencies, academics, students, as well as workers under Nehau. By the time it was, I think, Gau. They said, because we had only one slot, that I should actually be the one representing all this campus constituencies. So I spoke at Mandela's event when he was being honored at Wits University. And it was absolutely amazing to find myself in the company of all these people, O.R. Tambo, Nelson Mandela, and all the people who had been part of the national executive of the ANC in exile. And then I left and then started working for an organization called NECC, National Education Coordinating Committee. We were preparing the blueprint for a democratic South Africa. So our role, even though it started as a resistance organization in, I think, 1984, 85, when the students were saying they were not going to go to school in 1986, and that 1986 should be declared the year of no schooling. It was established during that period to try to urge the students to go back to classes and continue waging struggles in the schools and in the universities. So so I became the national organizer. I was establishing the structures all over the country for a democratic country, the PTSAs, now you call them parents teacher associations. I established all those structures everywhere in the country. And then when I left, I went to work for an organization called CBM, Conservative Business Movement, and we're dealing with transformation of the country. We had a group that was managing multi-party negotiations. We had another group that was managing National Economic Forum, now NETLEC, and Business Forum, now Business South Africa. I was part of the NETLEC or NEF, and I was also part of Business South Africa. After some time, I left and then worked for a mining company called Genco. And Genco worked for some time, and then I left Genco, worked for Eskom when we still had electricity, and then left Eskom, and that's when I now joined the IEC. But before I joined the IEC, I had actually been the chief executive of Gauteng Tourism Authority. I was appointed chief executive of Gauteng Tourism Authority. And then after that, I also spent some time being the chief. I established the Gauteng Film Commission. So I joined the IEC as a commission, rather as a provincial electoral officer for Gauteng. I established the IEC in Gauteng and appointed staff and then delivered the elections from 1998. So starting with the registration, we didn't have a voters roll, had to make sure that we had a voters roll, and then from there, the elections. And then after some time, I was appointed the commissioner for the IEC, and I served 2 terms of 7 years. And the second term, I was appointed the vice chairperson of the commission. So in short, that's my career that led me to be the commissioner of the IEC. So for me, when I look at my appointment at the IEC, I think it was a progression from where I started, because as a student activist, I was involved in the transformation of our society into a democratic future. And therefore, being the IEC now was seeing the implementation of the ideals I fought for when I was a youngster as a student activist.
It makes a lot of sense. As you've had a distinguished career with the IEC and your journey, as you gotten to your leadership position, overseeing like important elections, what would you say were the most pivotal moments in your time at IEC, and what challenges or pivotal moments ensuring the integrity of these elections? I mean, I'm sure it must have been the moments where the great former president Jacob Zuma was captured. It seems to me that I read a book called The ANC Billionaires one time. It mentioned it unpacks the journey that South Africans after Nelson Mandela was freed, for lack of a better word, but there is a book called the Road to Freedom. It mentions that we're free, but everything around us is moving. The walls are made out of atoms, but what makes it move? It's actually money. It's slash economy, which is driven by the money system. I want you to actually unpack. Are we actually free? Because most people say we're still stuck we're actually free in terms of politics, but economy, we're still stuck in that same system that was built by the whites elites.
Well, firstly, I must say that it was, for me, an exciting period in the IEC to be a part of the formative years of the organization when there were no systems at all. No one could actually tell you, this is how we do things. We had to experiment with quite a number of systems in order to be able to create an organization called the IEC. We didn't have a voters roll. We developed the voters roll for the first time. And it was absolutely wonderful for us as a country to be going through that. But one of the challenges of being a part of the IEC is that you also experience a lot of pressure from the political parties themselves. Some of the leaders would want you to do things in a particular way, and you've got to be very, very firm, even if you express your opinions gently, but you've got to be very firm and understand that the Electoral Commission was established by the Constitution as an independent body. And therefore, you've got to make sure that there are no foreign influences in terms of the character of the organization. So we had to resist some of those pressures that we were being subjected to by some of the political leaders. Now, your question about whether we are free or not. Of course, we got only political freedom. And political freedom on its own is insufficient. And even still with the political freedom, we have not been able to do the things that we should be doing for our society in order for our society to change and to see the benefits of freedom. The majority of our people are unable to celebrate freedom because their status is still the same. Their status has not improved. I always say that You know, you can be able to make a determination of the South African society by looking at animals. You look at the dogs, and I said, you know, for as long as you've got dogs in suburbs that have got medical aid, that are given chicken and rice, and then you've got dogs in the townships and villages that are fending for food in the streets. That begins almost to be like almost a reflection of our society, that things have not changed. The suburbs are still, you're still finding white people and very few black people living life of privilege, whilst the majority of our people in the villages and townships are living like those stray dogs with no food and having to fend for food in the streets. How many people are there begging for food on a daily basis? Our people are dying of malnutrition and hunger, whilst in the suburbs, people are dying of overeating. You know, they spend lots of time in the gyms because they're trying to reduce their weight after having eaten so much, whilst our people there in the villages, in the townships, have got absolutely nothing to eat. You know, so yes, we can celebrate freedom for as long as society is like that. We can celebrate freedom when we've got our youngsters who are unemployed and unemployable and are uneducated and uneducatable. They are there in the streets. After matric, there is nowhere to go. No company can hire them. They can't go to any tertiary institutions. And therefore, they just roam the streets and having to try to see how they can survive. The education system that they've been subjected to does not prepare them for those kind of challenges of how to survive under those conditions. And then you've got a few Black elite, and I'm including myself amongst these people who are called now the elite. We are able to take our children to the white schools, the so-called private schools, because those private schools, their ethos have not changed. They still remain white schools, even though there is a bit of integration and then they can assimilate, our children get assimilated into the culture of white supremacy. We are happy that our children are getting education of privilege, whilst the majority of our people out there are in the streets with no food, no education, and no jobs. You know, so we can celebrate this thing when we have a society such as that. It's just a matter of time before the society begins to turn against the elites because this situation is completely unsustainable and completely unacceptable.
Right now, we've just had an epiphany that I want us to brainstorm. I was actually thinking about the middle class and the poor Black South Africans and the rich/elites, whites and small blacks. I'll put it that way. The middle class in the voting system generally don't. Okay, I'll just start by putting it this way. They are mostly overlooked as people who are, how can I put this? They're overworked in the work environment. They're overworked. They are overtaxed. But in the voting categories or system, in the voting system, when they vote, they don't vote for less work strain. Funnily, weirdly enough, they don't vote for. They vote for more self-aware programs, etc. And then you find in the poor Black South Africans, though obviously that's what I think is going to actually continually making the ANC in power in the years to come, they vote for all those 350 rand grant funds, more social welfare, and those RDP houses with the two bedrooms and the free lounge, and free schooling, free education, free healthcare services, etc. Whilst the rich are also, because their voting process, because there's so few of them, they're not obviously going to vote, but they use their funds to pay for all these NGO projects, to pay less taxes, and actually fund the political parties or political campaigns to actually keep the poor black masses at bay continually in this continual process. That's why the system is placed in that way. I want you to actually unpack if it's actually possible for the system to actually change moving forward as South Africans. I want you to actually us to sharpen our minds basically in this conversation I'm actually having with you in terms of understanding where we are as a country and moving forward. Is there actually a future for South Africans?
Yeah, look, the electoral system cannot change or transform our society. It can't deal with the economic issues. The electoral system can only empower people to be able to make decisions about who should actually govern them. That's all that the electoral system can do. And the situation that you have explained, it's indeed correct in the sense that the political elite survive by having an army of uneducated people. And then almost every political party promises people grants when it comes to the elections. They promise them things that they know they need, but they've not provided them with. They know that they will need those votes in order to be able to get seats in parliament. And to be able to get that, you've got to go to a place where you are going to be able to get more votes. You're not going to get more votes by going to Sandton. You've got to go to Alexander in order to be able to reach as many people as possible, because when it comes to a voting system, it's equality of vote. Whether you are rich, you've got enough money, when you get to that ballot box, you only have one vote. Just like that person who is unemployed, who's got only one vote. So the system currently favors the political elite in the sense that the political elite can then be able to use the ignorance of people in order to be able to get more seats in parliament. The more ignorant people are, the better for the political elite. So that's how the system sustains itself. It sustains itself because you've got that army of ignorant, uneducated, unemployed people who want something to be able to survive. And then the politicians come in and promise them their survival. Many years ago, I read a book, I think it was From Propaganda to Brainwashing. And something that stood for me in that book was that if you want to control a person, you must kill their capacity to be happy and create a situation where you are seen as the only alternative to happiness. In other words, I make you as unhappy as possible and then project myself as the only alternative to happiness. So if you want to survive, to get out of the morass that you find yourself in, here I am, I can help you. So the political parties almost, the political elite almost operate in that fashion.
South Africa's electoral system is often cited as one of the progressive in Africa. However, elections in any democratic country come with challenges. What do you believe are the biggest challenges facing South Africa's election today, especially in terms of voter participation and trust in the system? Back in my early interviews, I interviewed a fellow called Angelica Kepsis. Angelica Kepsis is the founder of Vote Right. So the Vote Right is a digital system that when you vote, it's actually going to depict with the new like AI system, Google Analytics systems, and it actually captures that that votes for one participant in that certain time period. So you vote and your voting is going to be captured in like in a desktop or something, but it's artificial with AI tech. So I want you to unpack the integrity of the voting system in this South African landscape because it's regarded as one of the most progressive, I shall say.
Look, I mean, the electoral system in South Africa, it's a good system compared to quite a number of other areas in the continent, but it's got its own deficiencies, and deficiencies are many, and hence the electoral reform now panel that is trying to come up with the electoral system that is going to be acceptable to the majority of the people of South Africa. And I think key problem that we have in our system, which is proportional representation system, is the fact that there is no accountability. Even if you do wrong, because you become part of a political party and then you get appointed by a political party, you are protected by the political party. And therefore, as long as you obey a political party, you don't really have to care about what the majority of people say, including people who claim to have elected you. So the issue of accountability is one of the weaknesses, because what people want is a possibility of being able to recall a member of parliament if that member of parliament is doing something that is at variance with what the constituency that elected them wants. So we need to have clearly definable constituencies and then make sure that public representatives are accountable to clearly defined constituencies. At the moment, that aspect does not exist. And then you've got the president also who is elected by the National Assembly, instead of actually people feeling that, they have appointed and elected the president directly. And these are some of the issues that people have been raising, including the former Chief Justice Zondo, who said that, we must have an electoral system where the president is going to be elected directly so that you don't have a president who is a hostage to a political party and political interests.
Before we close off this interview, was kind of interesting learning about your journey and everything. Now, as South Africa and Africa as a whole as a continent continue to evolve, how do you see the role of young people, young Black South Africans shaping the future of the continent's democratic processes? And what advice would you give to South Africans who aspire to make a meaningful impact in the political landscape? Because generally, I want you to actually unpack how much it costs to actually start your own political campaign and actually to have a seat in those forgot the name of this place where political leaders stay and have says in this political landscape arena in the South African context.
Yeah, to basically get to the legislature and to the National Assembly. It is expensive for any person to participate in a political campaign. You need resources and lots of resources for materials, for advertisements, but also to be able to persuade people to move from one area to the other requires resources. So young people can only be able to influence by making sure that they are representatives and that the young people are more represented in the political parties that are contesting elections, because those political parties would have the resources that they would use for campaigning. So young people should not necessarily try to start campaigning on their own without the resources. Infiltrate those political parties and make sure that you can steer them in the direction that you want your country to go. Make sure that you change them from internally, because once you can actually be able to do so, then we're going to see a completely different arrangement. Young people are the future, as we always say, and then young people can't be the bystanders whilst the country is in flames. It is important that they take their responsibility seriously, just like all other generations before them. The 1976 generation, the Nelson Mandela generation of the Youth League, the generation of the Feast Must Fall. We've got to try to emulate those. Young people have got to try to emulate those, because to a large extent, those people have been able to make an impact in terms of the kind of the society that we require. So that, in my opinion, it's the responsibility of young people.
Thank you so much, Mr. Tselane, for coming through to the interview, and I appreciate you having a say and just acknowledging the platform.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for having me.